arguments while setting the new standard for what Intel looks, feels and sounds like. 338. Litigations and regulatory disputes. Patent infringement litigation, 2006-2007. In October 2006, a Transmeta lawsuit was filed against Intel for patent infringement on computer architecture and power efficiency technologies. 339. The lawsuit was settled in October 2007, with Intel agreeing to pay $150 million initially and $20 million per year for the next 5 years. Both companies agreed to drop lawsuits against each other, while Intel was granted a perpetual non-exclusive license to use current and future patented Transmeta technologies in its chips for 10 years. 340. Antitrust allegations and litigation, 2005-2023. In September 2005, Intel filed a response to an AMD lawsuit, 341, disputing AMD's claims, and claiming that Intel's business practices are fair and lawful. In a rebuttal, Intel deconstructed AMD's offensive strategy and argued that AMD struggled largely as a result of its own bad business decisions, including underinvestment in essential manufacturing capacity and excessive reliance on contracting out chip foundries. 342. Legal analysts predicted the lawsuit would drag on for a number of years, since Intel's initial response indicated its unwillingness to settle with AMD. 343. 344. In 2008, a court date was finalized. 345. 346. On the 4th of November 2009. New York's Attorney General filed an antitrust lawsuit against Intel Corp., claiming the company used illegal threats and collusion to dominate the market for computer microprocessors. On the 12th of November 2009, AMD agreed to drop the antitrust lawsuit against Intel in exchange for $1.25 billion. 346. A joint press release published by the two chip makers stated while the relationship between the two companies has been difficult in the past, this agreement ends the legal disputes and enables companies to focus all of our efforts on product innovation and development. 347. 348. An antitrust lawsuit, 349, and a class action suit relating to cold calling employees of other companies has been settled. 350. Allegations by Japan Fair Trade Commission, 2005. In 2005, the local Fair Trade Commission found that Intel violated the Japanese Anti-Monopoly Act. The commission ordered Intel to eliminate discounts that had discriminated against AMD. To avoid a trial, Intel agreed to comply with the order. 351, 352, 353, 354. Allegations by regulators in South Korea, 2007. In September 2007, South Korean regulators accused Intel of breaking antitrust law. The investigation began in February 2006, when officials raided Intel's South Korean offices. The company risked a penalty of up to 3% of its annual sales if found guilty. 355. In June 2008, the Fair Trade Commission ordered Intel to pay a fine of $25.5 million for taking advantage of its dominant position to offer incentives to major Korean PC manufacturers on the condition of not buying products from AMD. 356. Allegations by regulators in the United States, 2008-2010. New York started an investigation of Intel in January 2008 on whether the company violated antitrust laws in pricing and sales of its microprocessors. 357. In June 2008, The Federal Trade Commission also began an antitrust investigation of the case. 358. In December 2009, the FTC announced it would initiate an administrative proceeding against Intel in September 2010. 359, 360, 361, 362. In November 2009, following a 2-year investigation, New York Attorney General Andrew Cuomo sued Intel, accusing them of bribery and coercion, claiming that Intel bribed computer makers to buy more of the chips than those of their rivals and threatened to withdraw these payments if the computer makers were perceived as working too closely with its competitors. Intel has denied these claims. 363. On the 22nd of July 2010, Dell agreed to a settlement with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, to pay $100 million in penalties resulting from charges that Dell did not accurately disclose accounting information to investors. In particular, the SEC charged that from 2002 to 2006, Dell had an agreement with Intel to receive rebates in exchange for not using chips manufactured by AMD. These substantial rebates were not disclosed to investors, but were used to help meet investor expectations regarding the company's financial performance. These exclusivity payments grew from 10% of Dell's operating income in FY 2003 to 38% in FY 2006, and peaked at 76% in the first quarter of FY 2007. 364. Dell eventually died adopt AMD as a secondary supplier in 2006, and Intel subsequently stopped their rebates, causing Dell's financial performance to fall. 365, 366, 367. Allegations by the European Union, 2007-2023. In July 2007, the European Commission accused Intel of anti-competitive practices, mostly against AMD. 368. The allegations, going back to 2003, include giving preferential prices to computer makers buying most or all of their chips from Intel, paying computer makers to delay or cancel the launch of products using AMD chips, and providing chips at below standard cost to governments and educational institutions. 369. Intel responded that the allegations were unfounded and instead qualified its market behavior as consumer-friendly. 369. General Counsel Bruce Sewell responded that the Commission had misunderstood some factual assumptions regarding pricing and manufacturing costs. 370. In February 2008, Intel announced that its office in Munich had been raided by European Union regulators. Intel reported that it was cooperating with investigators. 371. Intel faced a fine of up to 10% of its annual revenue if found guilty of stifling competition. 372. AMD subsequently launched a website promoting these allegations. 373, 374. In June 2008, the EU filed new charges against Intel. 375. In May 2009, the EU found that Intel had engaged in anti-competitive practices and subsequently fined Intel €1.06 billion, $1.44 billion, a record amount. Intel was found to have paid companies, including Acer, Dell, HP, Lenovo and NEC, 376, to exclusively use Intel chips in their products, and therefore harmed other, less successful companies including AMD. 376, 377, 378. The European Commission said that Intel had deliberately acted to keep competitors out of the computer chip market and in doing so had made a serious and sustained violation of the EU's antitrust rules. 376. In addition to the fine, Intel was ordered by the Commission to immediately cease all illegal practices. 376. Intel has said that they will appeal against the Commission's verdict. In June 2014, the General Court, which sits below the European Court of Justice, rejected the appeal. 376. In 2022, the €1.06 billion fine was dropped, but was successively reimposed in September 2023 as a €376.36 million fine. 379. Corporate responsibility record. Intel has been accused by some residents of Rio Rancho, New Mexico of allowing volatile organic compounds, VOCs, to be released in excess of their pollution permit. One resident claimed that a release of 1.4 tons of carbon tetrachloride was measured from one acid scrubber during the fourth quarter of 2003. Butane emission factor allowed Intel to report no carbon tetrachloride emissions for all of 2003. 380. Another resident alleges that Intel was responsible for the release of other VOCs from their Rio Rancho site and that a necropsy of lung tissue from 2 deceased dogs in the area indicated trace amounts of toluene hexane, ethylbenzene, and xylene isomers. 381. All of which are solvents used in industrial settings but also commonly found in gasoline, retail paint thinners and retail solvents. During a subcommittee meeting of New Mexico Environment Improvement Board, a resident claimed that Intel's own reports documented more than 1,580 pounds, 720 kilograms, of VOCs were released in June and July 2006. 382. Intel's environmental performance is published annually in their Corporate Responsibility Report. 383. Conflict-free production. In 2009, Intel announced that it planned to undertake an effort to remove conflict resources materials lost from mines whose profits are used to fund armed militant groups, particularly within the Democratic Republic of the Congo, from its supply chain. Intel sought conflict-free sources of the precious metals common to electronics from within the country, using a system of first and third-party audits, as well as input from the Enough Project and other organizations. During a keynote address at Consumer Electronics Show 2014, Intel CEO at the time, Brian Kutnick, announced that the company's microprocessors would henceforth be conflict-free. In 2016, Intel stated that it had expected its entire supply chain to be conflict-free by the end of the year. 384, 385, 386. In its 2012 rankings on the progress of consumer electronics companies relating to conflict minerals, the Enough Project rated Intel the best of 24 companies, calling it a pioneer of progress. 387. In 2014, Chief Executive Brian Kutnick urged the rest of the industry to follow Intel's lead by also shunning conflict minerals. 388. Age discrimination complaints. Intel has faced complaints of age discrimination in firing and layoffs. Intel was sued in 1993 by 9 former employees, over allegations that they were laid off because they were over the age of 40. 389. A group called Face Intel, former and current employees of Intel, claims that Intel weeds out older employees. Face Intel claims that more than 90% of people who have been laid off or fired from Intel are over the age of 40. Upside Magazine requested data from Intel breaking out its hiring and firing bias, but the company declined to provide any. 390. Intel has denied that age plays any role in Intel's employment practices. 391. Face Intel was founded by Ken Hamidi, who was fired from Intel in 1995 at the age of 47. 390. Hamidi was blocked in a 1999 court decision from using Intel's email system to distribute criticism of the company to employees. 392, which overturned in 2003 in Intel Corporation v. Hamidi. Tax dispute in India. In August 2016, Indian officials of the Bruhat Bengaluru Mahanagara Palike, BBMP, parked garbage trucks on Intel's campus and threatened to dump them for evading payment of property taxes between 2007 and 2008, to the tune of $340 million, $4.3 million. Intel had reportedly been paying taxes as a non-air-conditioned office, when the campus in fact had central air conditioning. Other factors, such as land acquisition and construction improvements, added to the tax burden. Previously, Intel had appealed the demand in the Karnataka High Court in July, during which the court ordered Intel to pay BBMP half the amount of $170 million, $2.1 million, plus arrears by the 28th of August of that year. 393, 394, see also. 5nm process. As I read. AMD. Bumpless build-up layer. Comparison of ATI graphics processing units. Comparison of Intel processors. Comparison of NVIDIA graphics processing units. Cyrix. Engineering sample, CPU. Graphics processing unit, GPU. Intel Developer Zone, Intel DZ. Intel Driver Update Utility. Intel GMA, Graphics Media Accelerator. Intel HD and Iris Graphics. Intel Loy. Intel Museum. Intel Science Talent Search. List of Intel chipsets. List of Intel CPU microarchitectures. List of Intel manufacturing sites. List of Intel microprocessors. List of Intel graphics processing units. List of mergers and acquisitions by Intel. List of semiconductor fabrication plants. Wintel. Intel Management Engine. Intel-related biographical articles on Wikipedia. Andy Grove. Bill Gates. Bob Colwell. Craig Barrett, Chief Executive. Gordon Moore. Justin Radner. Pat Gelsinger. Paulo Tellenai. Robert Noyce. Sean Maloney. Notes. The Andrew Grove article explains how a clerical error.
Good. Let's stop the video.